Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be seeing some gameplay of War Thunder on the Xbox Series X, recorded in 4K 60 FPS. I'm going to be discussing this game very briefly because it's quite a weird one. So for a bit of background, I have a lot of experience with this game in the pre-alpha, a lot of hours in, but I hadn't played for about 4 years until now. I was actually off getting my commercial pilot's license. So this is my report as someone coming back to War Thunder with a bit more knowledge of aviation, of course. So let's start it off with the good things. This game looks great on the Series X. Especially as someone who hasn't played for a long time, it was great to see the improved sound design and graphical improvements. So although the game hasn't been revolutionized, which becomes pretty obvious when you're looking at some of the plane textures, for example, it has at least been kept looking decent. Namely, last time I played, every jet had fire coming out of the back, as if the developers didn't understand how a jet engine worked and thought that they were rockets instead. So they fixed that. And also, another one of the great things about this game, which has remained happily, is the community. For the most part, are a bunch of cool guys. Every game chat is filled with jokes and camaraderie, making up tactics and still joking about the balance of the game so many years later. And we're gonna discuss more good points about the game in the brief conclusion, but for now, unfortunately, we're gonna have to move on to some bad points about War Thunder. But first, let's finish watching this clip. The bad. Let's start with a Series X specific issue, which is the mouse latency that I've been experiencing. I play on a 1 millisecond 4K monitor, and I can say that this game has about a 10 millisecond input delay when playing with mouse and keyboard, which is what you'll want to do because playing this game on a controller is realistically not an option. And another issue on the control side is that this game, being very control intensive, there are points where you're trying to apply full elevator, deploy the flaps, move the camera, decrease your throttle all at the same time, and the game, or the console version at least, cannot handle this. The keyboard will ghost when you press 3 more keys at once. So it happens a lot because this game is full of moments where you're having to use a lot of input simultaneously. It's not an issue with my keyboard, it's an issue with the game. The controls are also ridiculously hard to configure, which is what you'll want to do. Even if you're just starting out, everyone has to configure War Thunder to work their own way. Things such as assigning the elevator to a full elevator position to a control and shift keys are very important in dogfights because they give you more authority than the mouse does. Because of this complexity, I haven't even bothered to fly jets or play simulator battles on console because the keyboard couldn't handle all those keybinds, first of all. So me thinking that I'm going to spend so much time rebinding each key individually to the hundreds of functions that are available, it's just not worth my time. So those are some of the bad points that I've picked up in the last month or so that I've been playing. Now, what has changed after 4 or 5 years of not playing? So realistic battles, which is what you'll be playing if you're over the age of 13 or have any interest in aviation whatsoever, is still a game of taking off climbing AFK for 5 minutes while watching a YouTube video and then hoping that a Spitfire doesn't rain down on you from the edge of space, making you have to repeat the whole process again. The minimap still does not have little arrows or directional indicators to show whether an enemy is above or below you, which seems like a simple change that already exists in games that deal with the three-dimensional game space like War Thunder does. For example, Warzone has this, the directional indications on the minimap. And there are still planes in every tier that are clearly overpowered, but this doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. In real life, some planes were better than others, and a fun part of this game is learning your aircraft, being able to use its strength, as well as learning how to avoid those overpowered planes. Which brings us to the next point, which is that they just keep adding more nations with more planes to mess up the balance. In the lower tiers, when I just started now, I realized that the Swedish planes were just destroying everything. Luckily now I've worked up to the LA-5, which is one of my favorite aircraft. My previous account was on PC, of course, where I had jets in almost every country. But I understand that this is their way of keeping the game fresh for older players. Specifically because War Thunder is a game about grinding before being a game about, machine warfare. And finally, the end game hasn't changed. There's always that 1 or 2 guys left in the enemy team who will either be in space or circling over their field until everyone either gives up or runs out of fuel. They've tried to fix this with blind hunt and other things, but they need to be more aggressive. For example, why don't they set a time limit, for how long you can stay within 5 kilometers of your spawn base? War Thunder is now basically just a battlefield game without soldiers. But at the beginning it was, and for me continues to be, an aviation game. I haven't mentioned ground vehicles in this video because I don't play them very much, but the issues are somewhat the same. I assume that if you only play tanks, some of the annoyances of air battles will not be able to affect you, but I'm sure that there are other annoyances in those modes as well. But the real question is, what's the point of War Thunder? It seems that Gaijin knows that they're the only player in this space, so they're just expanding laterally at every possible opportunity. Like I said, the game has always had a stupidly difficult grind, but now we have a premium system, we have a battle pass, and we still have the regular, premium tier, paid, overpowered aircraft that you can buy, which is where they probably make the most of their money. So this business model, I don't think it can go on forever. At some point, arguably one which has already passed, having 1,400 vehicles or whatever it is in your 10-year-old game is no longer a selling point. Out of all of those vehicles, a large portion are uncompetitive and another large portion are overpowered. So this is my first video sort of doing a documentary style live commentary, but let's have somewhat of a conclusion here, okay? War Thunder is a unique game. Having no competition in this market is a bad thing because it doesn't force them to innovate, and it makes me sad that there's not much good to be said about this game after coming back 5 years later. I mean, I still have a lot of fun moments, and chaining together a few kills in realistic battles is incredible, especially for someone who's very passionate about aviation such as myself. But from a game perspective, as someone who enjoys games, it seems a bit worrying the lack of direction that this game has taken. They're just sort of milking the community, releasing more overpowered planes, and like I said, I don't think they can keep it going forever. It feels like most of the community, especially the old school guys like me, are bored, but they just hop on because there's no alternative. Unless you want to buy a full simulator rig and go play Flight Simulator or DCS. There's no alternative. I think the game needs to be re-engined and remade. They can sell this one-off, like this current build, to a maintenance team, but War Thunder 2 needs to get made and released as a paid game with next gen, if you want to call it that, graphics, physics, and an engine. Otherwise, I don't see this game surviving much longer. I think it will just stay alive as it is now because there's no competition. Just a sort of corpse of the game getting increasingly bloated with premium DLC until something better comes out. Which is good for Gaijin, I guess. They keep making money. But it's bad for the people who are sort of craving a game in this segment, and the only offering is this old game where, you know, you're just getting destroyed by the same planes. You know, there's a lack of variation. You get in a battle, you climb for 5 minutes, you get shot down, you hope to shoot a couple of guys down. You know, they could introduce, for example, an arcade battles type of thing with the realistic battles flight model. Why haven't they done that, you know, for example? So even if they want to keep selling premium planes, just a little bit of innovation like that could save the game. But to be honest with you, as soon as Flight Simulator comes out, I'm going to be playing that, and this game will be gone from my system. But, you know, with fond memories. I've had a lot of fun with this game, and it's been good dogfighting. And, yeah, just a bit sad, but also smile because it happened sort of mentality at this point. So thanks for watching.